Ole Miss is trending for a top cornerback prospect.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Isaiah Hamilton, the top portal cornerback, releasing his top four, and Ole Miss is right in the thick of it. It'll probably be a battle between blue bloods, or at least modern blue bloods, but I do like the direction it's going. I talked Jacob Bostick, the wide receiver from Iowa. Yes, you heard that correctly. We learn a little about this player, and I make it make a little bit of sense. And we look at the wide receiver room post-spring transfer portal and what it will be in the fall. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers to make the show what it is. The week of July 4th, on July 2nd, we are going to be hosting a meet and greet. Time and location is to be determined, but it will be on July 2nd. It looks like it'll be in the Madison or Flowood area. We will continue to let you know on that. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and get to see Jackson Dart and Eli Manning on May 6th. Go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. Game off. We got to talk some more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you teammate with your friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis that taunt your friends. So download Monopoly Go right now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, so an interesting thing. Yesterday we played detective on here and listed some players that I was piecing together clues that we should probably keep an eye on. And one of the players, lo and behold, less than 5 hours after the video released his top four, and it was Isaiah Hamilton from the University of Houston. He is a guy that started out at Texas Southern. He's a Texas athlete. He is transferred up to, I don't know if it was the G5 or the Power 5 at that point, but Isaiah Hamilton was one of the best cornerbacks for Houston last year with 50 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 4 passes defended. But he's looking to transfer up maybe to the SEC level. He released a top four, and as you can imagine, it is very SEC and Big Ten centric. Isaiah Hamilton's top four right now is Mizzou, Bama, Ole Miss, and Michigan. He misspelled Mizzou. Has Bama in all capital letters, so you can think about what's going on. But this is a player that we've had our eyes on for a while. And when I say we've had our eyes on, I mean Locked On Ole Miss has had their eyes on, because him and Jackson Dart have been connected for a little bit of a minute. So we wanted to see if he got into the transfer portal to what was going to happen. But Mizzou, Bama, Ole Miss, and Michigan, that lets you know how good of a prospect this player is, honestly, because those are modern blue blood type schools. Alabama's absolutely a blue blood. Heck, they've been to the playoffs seemingly every year for the last decade. So, of course, they're a blue blood. Michigan's the defending national championship winner. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh is off to greener pastures, but they are still elevated. And you have Mizzou, who has a ton of money, and they do very well in the NIL space. Since NIL became a thing, they've gotten better and better and better. Ended up winning the Cotton Bowl a year ago against Ohio State. Good program. Mizzou and Ole Miss kind of synonymous right now as far as a young team that has taken advantage of the NIL space. This is a quarterback, and you want to look at the cornerbacks on Ole Miss's roster. The far and away leader is Tre Amos. Everybody knows that. Ole Miss promoted Tre Amos versus Tre Harris far too often in the spring for it to be anything else but major thing. But on the other side, you're like, okay, is it Brandon Turnage, who Juice Wells, when I interviewed him, talked about how well he had performed during the spring? Is it Chris Graves, who started a single game last year against the Georgia Bulldogs? Or is it the JUCO newcomer, Cedrick Beavers? Is it none of them? Are they recruiting a cornerback to come in and start and take that room over? Is that why they're recruiting Isaiah Hamilton? Isaiah Hamilton could walk onto Ole Miss's campus right now and probably be the second cornerback. And by second, I mean just like Trey Amos on one side, he's on the other. The defense would get a whole lot better. I think that Pete Golding saw what happened a year ago, to where they were forced to play a lot of cloud coverage, a lot of four deep, a lot of quarters. And people were able to find holes on that because they just couldn't man coverage everybody. They could do it against like Georgia Tech and they could do it against Arkansas. But whenever you played Alabama or you played Georgia or even Texas A&M, because Evan Stewart and Ananias Smith and those guys, those are some dudes. You couldn't necessarily man up against that team and they could take advantage of you. All of a sudden, you had to put some pressure going back to zone defense. They allowed people to run the ball on you. So Pete Golding realized, in my opinion, that last year's philosophy of getting really good G5 players was not going to work. We are looking for players from the Power 5 level is the path that Ole Miss is going on. And yes, the Houston Cougars are in the Big 12, so we're going to count them, even though they came from the American 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, Isaiah Hamilton, he was playing at Texas Southern in Houston. So that's not really relevant to him either way. But he can serve the purpose of somebody to be on the outside. You have Trey Amos. You have a couple of people that would be really good at man coverage and allow you to do stuff with the front seven of a defense that is creative, that is dangerous, and can cause a lot of turnovers. Whoever are playing the safety positions, okay? Not the Trey Amos and not, let's just for the sake of this, we'll say Isaiah Hamilton, if he comes on board Ole Miss's roster. You have your front seven, front six that you can get creative with your blitzing, because Walter Nolan is going to get a double team every play. You hope that JJ Pegues warrants a double team every single play, and single coverage is going to go to Princely and Mommy and Jared Ivey. That's what you hope for. And then you have a free blitzer and all of that going on. That's kind of the secret sauce of what Georgia has done over the years and what Alabama has done over the years. The whole key is both of your interior defensive tackles demand a double team or they will wreck games. That is the complete secret sauce to Nick Saban's defense. But if you bring those in man coverage and you can play some press man, get up on the wide receivers to eliminate short passes, that's going to make things a lot easier because there's smaller windows for the quarterback to get the ball into. He's not going to have a whole lot of time if all of this works the way that we think it will. And the middle defenders get a chance to hunt, whether it be Key Lawrence or Yam Banks or Jaden Kennedy or Lewis Moore or Trey Washington or any of those guys. They can hunt in the middle of the field. The defense will become more dangerous with another press man type corner out there that'll give time for Chris Graves. And Pete Golding's defense, it's not 11 players a starting defense. It's 22 players a starting defense. And whenever you see that, you realize it's like, okay, Trey Amos and Chris Graves on one side, and then you've got Cedrick Beavers and Brandon Turnage on the other. If one of those is not what you expect it to be, you need to go bring somebody in because those four are going to play a whole lot. Isaiah Hamilton, a really good player, and can help this defense out. We'll see what happens. Like I said, Mizzou, they're a major player in the NIL space right now. Underestimate them at your own peril. Bama, everybody knows about Bama. Everybody knows about Michigan. But in this situation, because of, I don't know, what's been on my radar for a long period of time, if Ole Miss gets him to campus, if that visit happens, which once he gets truly into the portal, they're going to work to try and set up visits probably as soon as tomorrow, sometime around that, bringing people in. If he comes to campus, I think Ole Miss has a really good shot at him. Now, those are some major league big blue bloods that we saw as well. So it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a real fight, but it's going to be also what we expect. Ole Miss is what, the 5th, 6th, 7th preseason best team in the country for 2024, leading in preseason. Yeah, you can fight any fight that's necessary to fight, whether it be Alabama or Michigan or Mizzou. All of those are top 10 programs from last season. All of those are going to be in the thick of it. So we'll see. Ole Miss getting him to campus will be the first key, but Ole Miss is right in the thick of it right now. And this is somebody that Jackson Dart has followed on Instagram since January, I think. It's been a minute that this has been underway. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But Isaiah Hamilton, good football player that has worked his way up from Texas Southern in Houston up to Houston, University of Houston, and now he's going to try and go to the SEC or Big Ten. It's really, really interesting stuff. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. So all of the Iowa jokes aside, and yes, there would be some, a young, big wide receiver potentially was offered by the Ole Miss Reps. We'll tell you about it in a second. Passion, drive, and patience, what keeps the winning formula on winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that shouting. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinion, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we talked a little bit, just very briefly, about this yesterday. Ole Miss offered a receiver from Iowa named Jacob Bostick. And we need to kind of dig into this a little bit as well. I talked about Nick Nash yesterday and Elijah Badger, as well as wide receiver potential targets. But this wide receiver is interesting. He is currently holding multiple offers, but he's got offers from Iowa State, Pittsburgh, Houston, Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss. So honestly, if you look at this right here, Ole Miss is probably, if they want him, if they really like him, looks like they should be able to get him. And you remember, this is worth remembering, George McDonald was a wide receiver coach at Illinois just a year ago, which means during the recruiting process, there might be a relationship there as well. That might be the Ole Miss to Jacob Bostick relationship. But they got to beat Iowa State, Pittsburgh, Houston, and Vanderbilt currently, which they should be able to do if they want it. But good football player. Now, he'll be a redshirt freshman next year. He has 4 years of eligibility. He's 6'2", about 190 pounds. He does fit the mold of a bigger wide receiver that will grow into his body, that will probably grow another inch passing. He might end up being 6'3", 220 by the time he is a sophomore. Something like that. A truly big-bodied wide receiver. And that is something that Ole Miss doesn't have after Tre Harris. Let's assume that after this season, okay, Tre Harris is done after this year. I'm expecting Deion Smith to be done after this year. Marquis Willis, I'm not exactly 100% sure on that, but there's no real big body wide receivers. People are going to say, well, what about Aiden Williams? Well, Aiden Williams isn't exactly this. Aiden Williams is like the Vince Sanders on that 2013-2014 team. not the Laquan Treadwell. Ole Miss is trying to find players that can be the Laquan Treadwell. And if you look at wide receivers that Ole Miss has coming back in 2025 and beyond, I mean, you've got the commitment of Jerome Miles, who is going to be a big body type wide receiver. You can watch the video tonight with Brian Smith talking about that. He's the next big bodied wide receiver for Lane Kiffin. That is what Brian Smith said. Well, I think Jacob Bostick can be a little bit of a big bodied wide receiver too. Now, I'm not saying a plus wide receiver plus or a flex tight end type. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking the true Tre Harris, Jonathan Mingo type size and build that you can do. The frame can handle it and stuff like that. I think that he will grow to be 6'2", 6'3", 210 pounds, 215 pounds, and kind of be, honestly, an Anquan Bolden type threat to a defense. He's a good wide receiver. And yes, I mean, everybody's going to roll their eyes whenever everybody sees that he plays or he played at Iowa. Or played at Iowa is a little bit beside the point. But he only played in 2 games over the course of the season because of the red shirt. But he is a guy that can come in, can pick up the offense for a year, and can be ready to go next year. Why is this important? Okay. You have Austin Simmons and you have Walker Howard. Those are the 2 primaries for the backup quarterback position, and they are going to compete for a starting quarterback job. The young wide receivers, I'm not talking about Deion Smith, Tre Harris, Jordan Watkins, Juice Wells. I'm not talking about that tier, that group. I'm talking about Aiden Williams. I'm talking about Caden Lee. I'm talking about Nareel White. And you sit there and look at it. That big wide receiver, it's not there. I mean, you're going to have Jerome Miles, but he'll be a true freshman at that point. He's kind of an unknown quantity, but he's got the size and the speed and the ball skills to be an absolute star. That somehow he's underrated by rivals. Absolutely nuts. It's bizarre. It's like the lowest rated 3-star or something like that you can do. It's weird. He has 2 ratings where he's in the top like 150, and he's got 2 ratings where he's a 3-star and he's not even ranked. It makes no sense. But I talked to Brian Smith about that, and he said, yeah, nobody goes to Utah and watch kids play. That's just an under-scouted area. It's a big state with not a lot of people. And it makes a lot of sense. He plays at Corner Canyon. That's the same high school that Jackson Dart went to, but I can understand. Good program, by the way. So whenever you look at what Jacob Bostick can do, you can see it fills the role in the next year, 2025 season. If he gets up, him and Aiden Williams can be the outside guys, and the inside guys is Nareel White or Caden Lee. And you can see how they're building up with honestly a second team. And we heard Lane Kiffin talk about, I think it was last year, honestly. It might have been 2 years ago, but I think it was last year where he said the portal can be used to get depth too. The portal does not have to be for a big name starter every single time. It can be for depth. So we'll see exactly how that goes. All right, before we go to break and we talk about the wide receiver room pro spring, I do want to let you know that Tre Harris is hosting a free football camp for kids age 7 to 12 in Lafayette, Louisiana, at Clark Field. And it's from 9 a.m. to 11. And there's also another event as well. Let's see. It is from 1 to 4 is the second session. So there's 2 sessions. Go to eventcreate.com/e/Tre Harris Camp 1. Do that. Sign up if you have a kid that wants to participate. It's a completely free camp. And Tre Harris, this is a really cool thing that he's doing for his people in Lafayette. I'm pretty excited about what he's doing there. But 7 to 12 years old, June 8th on Clark Field in Lafayette, Louisiana. There's one from 9 to 11, and there's a session from 1 to 4. So if you're interested in those sessions with Trey, if you're in that area, if you have a kid that wants to go to a football camp, here's a completely free football camp to where you can go have a little bit of fun with possibly the best wide receiver in the entire country. Really, really cool stuff. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. The next segment, we continue to talk wide receivers in 2024 and beyond and how good they can be. We look at combinations and all of that good stuff. All right, game off. We got to pause right here to talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You talked about this already, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. There's unique stickers that you can trade with your friend to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day, with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton of their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you need to win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play Store or the App Store. Game on. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Be part of history. All right, the wide receiver room post-spring. I think we need to talk about that. We talked about Jacob Bostick and all that, and a little bit into the Tre Harris, but mainly into why Jacob Bostick and how he could help with the next group of wide receivers. Jacob Bostick isn't being recruited to play over Tre Harris, Juice Wells, Deion Smith, all of those guys. No. Those guys are one-and-done type players, though. Tre Harris is not going to be here in 2025. Neither is likely Deion Smith. Marquis Willis, I don't know if I'd count on that as well. Jordan Watkins, I don't know if he's not going to be here as well. So this wide receiver unit needs to be replenished, and going through these transfer portal window, there's certain opportunities for you to improve yourself. And one of the ways you do it is through the portal, finding somebody with, say, 4 years of eligibility that you can groom in your system. Tre Harris is obviously the best position player or the best wide receiver in college football, in my opinion. Last year, he had 54 catches, 985 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that was with him not playing really 3 games. That was with him playing 75% of the season. So if he'd have played the whole year, I think he would have conservatively had 70 catches, about 1,200 yards receiving, and probably about 10 to 12 touchdowns. That is what Tre Harris would have done, and we would have been having completely different conversations about Tre Harris going into the 2024 season. Now, Jordan Watkins was the Mr. Reliable on this team. He had 53 catches, not most of it, but spent the latter half of the season with a broken hand. This picture you can see is him against Mississippi State. He had a broken hand playing with a plate in that game, but he has 53 catches, 741 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was Mr. Reliable, though. Whenever Ole Miss needed yards, needed plays, Jordan Watkins was the guy that got dialed up by Jackson Dart. He is back as well. And Dayton Wade graduated, so Ole Miss needed to bring somebody in. So they decided to bring in somebody that in 2022, after that year, was competing in the 2023 season, or at least in the preseason, to be one of the better wide receivers in the Southeastern Conference, and that's Antoine Juice Wells. These are his 2022 numbers. He had 68 catches, 928 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Had really breakout games against Tennessee and Clemson, 2 games that South Carolina was essentially unstoppable in, but his work there helped it out. Now, we're going to stop right there and talk about this for a second. Juice Wells and Jordan Watkins. I think there is a good chance that both of these are slot type wide receivers in this offense this season. I know they can both play outside, and sometimes they probably do based off of Lane Kiffin's formation and everything in this offense. But if you look what Deion Smith and Marquis Willis provide, you can see them playing on the outside numbers. It could be a situation where there's a Deion Smith, Aiden Williams out opposite of Tre Harris, and you want to get either Juice Wells or Jordan Watkins on the football field. There's so much talent in this wide receiver room. The number 6 wide receiver would start at almost every SEC school. Caden Lee would literally start all over the conference, and it doesn't matter where. I don't even care if it's Georgia. He would have a very good chance to start there as well. And he is a Georgia kid, by the way. But this wide receiver room is stacked. That's why I'm telling you that. Deion Smith has a chance to be so impactful in this offense. He is somebody that has Randy Moss level ability. Now, will that come through? I'm not saying it will. I'm saying he has that ability. If you don't believe me, look at his video when he played at Holmes Community College on Huddle. Go back and watch that. They ran essentially him on 3 routes. He ran goes, he ran short crosses, and he ran posts, all of which were about speed because nobody could run with him. And he was a 6'3" guy, very well built with an amazing catch radius. All of that stuff made him a mismatch at the Mississippi Junior College level. Now, at the SEC level, it's going to be a little bit different story, but he's not being brought into Ole Miss to be the number 1 wide receiver. That is the difference between this happening this year and this happening with, honestly, any other coach in Ole Miss history going back to Johnny Vaught. He's not being brought in to be the number 1. For years, Mississippi lived off the JUCOs in Mississippi to bring in starting guys, Pat Coleman, those guys. They lined up and became the number 1 option, the number 1 wide receiver, because they had really good ability. Deion Smith is not that guy. He is brought in to be a number 2, a complementary wide receiver, somebody that's going to make it a little easier on Tre Harris, who has elite run after the catch ability himself. Deion Smith taking a little bit of that workload off of Tre Harris means that all the wide receivers are going to be able to do well. And if you pay attention to both of those, the middle of the field opens up with an Antoine Juice Wells, a Jordan Watkins, or a Caden Priest corner, or Daquan Wright. So really, really interesting stuff. I'm pretty fired up about what this wide receiver unit can be. I've talked about it essentially the whole time during this offseason because it is going to be the strength of this Ole Miss offense because of the different type players they have, the different things they can do, the talent athletically that they have, and the fact that they have catch radius that's just ridiculous. Go back and watch the Texas A&M game to see Tre Harris in action and go look at, like I said, Deion Smith stuff all the time. From what everybody's saying, I think it was Jared Ivey's podcast on Ole Miss Spirit or whatever. He did talk about, they were talking about Tre Harris, about Deion Smith being here in June or May. So at the end of this month, I'm assuming he's going to move on into the first summer term. Good stuff. This wide receiver room is going to take Ole Miss wherever they can go. If Ole Miss is a national championship level team, this wide receiver room will be a national championship level room. If Ole Miss underachieves in the fall, it'll be because this wide receiver room did not do what it needed to do. Simple as that. Just kind of is what it is. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. We have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the number 1 Ole Miss podcast out there, and thank you for that. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. For those of you on YouTube, we're going to send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone. We'll be back Monday. Happy weekend.